Polyscience, Sous Vide Professional Immersion Circulator Clone. Wow, this definitely has been a fun ride. After building the temperature controller and cooking a few things like a venison roast and corned beef, I was instantly hooked. So after a bit more research, I decided to build a Polyscience Sous Vide Professional Immersion Circulator Clone. Of course, you could buy an immersion circulator as cheap as $199, such as the Anova Sous Vide circulator, and they come in cool colors too. This build cost me about $130, but I have the satisfaction of building something on my own. With that said, I have to throw in a disclaimer. This is not a tutorial on building a sous vide immersion circulator. This is to document how I built mine. If you do decide to build from this article, do so at your own risk. Now that we got that out of the way, I picked up a Hawk E52 immersion heater circulator from eBay and tested it out. This was most of my cost. Then I filled a 3-gallon bucket with cold tap water and turned it on. It heated the water to 160 degrees in about 20 minutes. Okay, it works. I started by removing the 2 screws that held on the chassis and placed the screws and chassis to the side. After figuring out the wiring, I removed the temperature control knob and circuit board. The brown color-coded wire is the standard, hot, and the blue color-coded wire is neutral in Europe. Looks like a good bit of room for the solid-state relay and PID controller. I removed the heating element and buffed it real good with some steel wool. The heating element is 1,100 watts. That should be plenty. Removed the switch, power light, and faceplate. Sanded, primed, and painted the faceplate. Sanded, primed, and painted the chassis and mounting bracket. I decided on the same color scheme as my pit build Frankensmoker, red and black. After doing a dry fit, I decided to change the color. Red just wasn't working for me. Ah, that's better. Don't worry, it will look great when it's all put together. Trust me. After several coats of paint, I put 3 coats of satin polyurethane on to protect the paint and reduce the gloss. Cleaned up the cooling fan and oiled the bushing for the motor. Buffed the circulator housing and outside of the unit with steel wool, buffed all the screws on a wire wheel, removed the excess wires and tidied up the existing wiring. Marked the area to cut out with the rotary tool for the controller. I tried aligning it so no holes would show once the controller was snapped in place. Dry fitting the JLD 612 controller. 2 more coats of paint followed by 3 clear coats of satin. Just so happens the solid-state relay fits the existing holes in the Hawkeye. I did not use the holes. I also ditched the heatsink because it won't fit. $20 lost because I won't be using the heatsink and the thermal paste that was ordered. Oh well. Wiring the solid-state relay and the controller. Using a cork for the PT100 thermocouple probe. After a little bit of grinding, then some drilling, the thermocouple probe fit perfectly. Thank you, Dave, at Shitty Food Blog. I am very happy with the fitment of the probe using the cork. Installed a heavy-duty 20-amp, 125-volt, 15-amp, 250-volt SPST, 2-terminal on-off toggle switch with plate between pin number 2 on the solid-state relay and the heating element. I did this to avoid the possibility of burning out the element. This also enables me to set up the PID controller without the heating unit submerged in water. Trying to get everything to fit and clear the circulator pump housing and fan. I was worried the motor housing would get too hot and melt the wires. I used 12-gauge stranded wire. I should have used 14-gauge solid, but what the hell, it's what I had. Trying to keep everything secure and away from the circulator, motor fan, and housing? Man, it's tight. Yes, I'll clean up that tape job later. I put it all back together and was testing the circulator but had problems with the temperature probe. So I removed the chassis and switched the wires, still getting some weird readings. Here's a tip from the Denki at http:/mythopoeic.org. Run a jumper from the outer braided shield of the temperature probe to the PID controller. This was added after the fact to solve a problem with rapidly fluctuating temperature readings. I ran my jumper to wire pin WAR10 on the controller. Thanks, Denki. Testing the unit, everything works. I did have to calibrate the unit by 6 degrees Fahrenheit. I confirmed the temperature with my thermopen and everything was looking good until the temperature started going past the preset value. 3 degrees, 5 degrees, 7 degrees, and just kept going like the Energizer Bunny. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out how to get the damn thing to shut off at the preset temperature. If I auto-tune after I set the preset value, then it holds at that temp fine. If I don't auto-tune, the temp just keeps climbing. I think I did something to the settings. I'm thinking it's the hysteresis setting, HY. I will work on that tonight. In the parameter menu, press the Set key, then input the code 0089 using the arrow keys, and press Set again. Locate HY. Use the arrow keys to scroll through the parameters until you find HY hysteresis. Update, the temp will settle down, but you need to give it a bit of time. I decided to use my Coleman stainless steel steel-belted 54-quart cooler. It appeared to be separating in some areas, so I cut a small hole in the plastic and pumped in a half a tube of construction adhesive. This is going to take forever and a day to dry. I made a quick lid for the water bath. I'm going to need a thicker lid. If I had cut the cooler lid, I wouldn't be able to use the cooler for anything other than a water bath. I made a few weights to keep the food submerged. Once they gas up a bit, the sealed bags can become buoyant. I vacuum sealed some of my nuts, each weigh about 3 ounces. I figured it would be a good idea to vacuum seal them because folks would not appreciate it if my nuts touched their food. Here's the finished project. Looks good, don't it? I ran my first test with a 10-pound bag of wings. The circulator worked flawlessly. This trial run was before I had made any weights. I had some expected floating issues and will be making some weights for the bags. Some folks use their marbles. I don't have any marbles. I lost them, so instead, I'm using my nuts. Don't worry, I'll make sure my nuts don't touch the food. I had a few laying around. After about an hour, the temperature stabilized. The circulator was set to 170 degrees, and my highest point the first hour was 171.1 degrees. After the initial hour, it held within 0.5 degrees. I'm quite impressed. I didn't even auto-tune the circulator for the new water bath. I tested 3 different styles of wings, and all the wings were awesome. They rendered nicely in the sous vide machine. The skin was crispy on all of them after a 4 or 5 minute fry. The wings were pulled about a minute after they started floating during the deep fry. The skin softened up on the sauced wings, but were still awesome. My next test was a 6-pound top round. Some of the family prefer this cut cooked to medium well. I prefer medium rare at the most. I set the machine to 134 degrees medium rare. Dinner was planned for around 5 p.m. I figured a 2-hour sous vide bath was plenty, but due to unforeseen circumstances, the dinner had to sit a bit longer in the bath, about an additional hour. Being able to hold a steak at a desired internal temperature without overcooking is priceless. Results were awesome, and the bath held at 0.5 degrees the entire cook. Next up was a chuck roast. The chuck roast was seared at high heat with a bit of cooking oil on all sides for 60 seconds in a hot cast iron skillet. After 1 hour in the freezer, the chuck roast is removed and vacuum sealed with any drippings. The vacuum bags are labeled and weighted heavily to keep the meat submerged as gas builds up from the cooking process can cause buoyancy. The chuck roast was in the bath 48 hours at 137 degrees Fahrenheit. Next was a London broil. Sous vide is set up and hot tap water is used to fill the 54-quart water bath. 2 pots of boiling water are added and the temp is about 134 degrees. The machine overshoots and I bring it back down with a quart or 2 of cool water. This unit always overshoots about 1.5 degrees, but takes forever to come back down due to the insulated cooler. After the temp is at 134 degrees, I check the other side of the bath with my thermopen. Temperature is accurate throughout the entire batch. I am good to go. London broil is removed from the refrigerator, no rinse and no trim, and are generously salted using a coarse salt. The top and bottom are seared for 30 seconds at high heat in a cast iron skillet with a bit of cooking oil. After 1 hour in the freezer, the steaks are removed and vacuum sealed with any drippings. Bags are labeled and weighted heavily to keep the meat submerged as gas builds up from the cooking process can cause buoyancy. This is a post-sear. I went a little heavy on the sear for the London broil, but my family prefers the meat done a bit more, so I wasn't worried about being slightly over medium rare. The London broil was in the bath for 45 hours at 134 degrees. The circulator was reading 134.1 degrees at the time the meat was placed into the bath. The temp fluctuation on this over a several-hour period was 0.2 of a degree. Not bad. After tasting the London broil and being very happy with the flavor and texture, I decided on a much shorter water bath than what some folks were using. I felt 48 hours was extreme overkill. So I am going with an 8-hour or less bath at 134 degree on my next attempt.